Steel Dragon 2000 is famous for being the longest roller coaster in the world and also one of the only giga coasters in the world. Something interesting, this coaster opened the same year as Millennium Force, but Millennium Force just opened a little bit sooner, and so Millennium Force got the title of the first ever giga coaster. But when Steel Dragon opened, it did take the height record from Millennium Force, as it is just a little bit taller. The one record this coaster still has is its track length. No coaster is longer than 8,133 feet, which is absolutely insane that this coaster uses that much track. The even crazier part is that Japan will get earthquakes, and so they had to soup up that entire structure with a lot more steel so that it had the proper bracing so everything would be secure should an earthquake come around. So this coaster is an absolute monstrosity, and I had the opportunity to ride it. So this is going to be my full in-depth review. I'm going to talk about everything you need to know about the ride so that you know what to expect should you go and do this. So first things first, you can find this coaster at Nagashima Spa Land. It's pretty much its headlining attraction. Hikuge is definitely the best ride there. However, this is by far still the most recognizable. You can see this coaster from miles away. It is insane. It's the tallest coaster in Asia, 318 feet, max speed 95 miles per hour, so you go fast. However, this coaster, unlike some others, is not the type that say super low to the ground, is all about fast transitions or really feeling that speed. Really, this coaster is all about floater airtime. This ride is just one giant out and back. All it is a bunch of hills, and then the turnaround you got a bunch of turns. So if I had to compare this to any roller coaster, it wouldn't be one of the other gigas. It would probably be Mamba or Steel Force at Worlds of Fun and Dorney Park. This coaster did not feel that much different from, say, Mamba. The only difference is it's taller, it's faster, and it's longer. Really, the only thing special about this ride just is how massive it is. The layout is not exactly the most interesting. And I don't know if that's just me being picky, but I can't really say I was super impressed with Steel Dragon. I for real think I enjoyed watching it more than I did riding it. So yes, it is definitely my least favorite giga that I've done. I thought it was enjoyable. Like, it's not a bad ride. Because, I mean, I enjoyed Mamba, and I would take this over Mamba, but personally, I would never rank this coaster as high as even rides like Millennium Force. One thing that I think made the experience a little strange was the whole train and restraint design, because these are B&M trains on a Morgan coaster. That's a little weird. It's also the only B&M train with 2 seats across, not 4. It's got your clamshell restraint, there's a seat belt, then the other restraint they have is a leg restraint. Yes, there are shin guards on this B&M train, which you don't ever get on this style of train. So that for me was a thumbs down, because we know for a fact that that train does not need that restraint, especially when you also have a seat belt going across your lap, which already acts as your secondary restraint. B&M has a flawless track record as far as safety goes, so my guess is the reason this is there is because of Japanese regulations, or they just like to be overly cautious. But anyways, enough about restraints. When you board your train, of course, if you're like me, you're going to want to go towards the front or towards the back and not get stuck in the middle. I did have the opportunity to do this in the very front row and the very back row. Boy, did that take some maneuvering, because they assigned seats on this, so I had to seriously beg some people to switch with me and then let a whole lot of people in front of me so that I could be lined up to be the first person on the next train, which would put me in the front row. So it was not an easy experience to nail that. However, I am glad I was able to do so, because the front and the back are definitely different. I will say though, however, when I rode in the front row, I wasn't paying attention to the forces on my body or that feeling I was flying through the air as much as I maybe would have otherwise if I had not been riding it in the pouring rain. Yes, that is right, ladies and gentlemen. I rode Steel Dragon 2000 in the front row in the pouring rain, and holy frick, that hurt so much. If you've ridden any giga in the rain, I'm sure you know exactly what it feels like. It's needles hitting your skin. I pretty much rode with my hands covering my face the entire time because it hurt. But it was either that or not ride it at all. So I chose to ride it. I have no regrets, but man, did that make for an interesting experience. So I've talked about how this coaster has B&M trains, so you'd think, wow, I bet that means this ride is super smooth. But really, it's not that smooth. So that tells you what it is it's the track, it's not the trains. I mean, rides like Phantom's Revenge are glossy smooth, but some of the other Morgans maybe not as much. So for me, that was a bit of a turnoff. As for where I recommend sitting on this coaster, even though I was getting pelted with rain the entire time while sitting in the front, I did think that the front row was better than the back on Steel Dragon 2000, which is interesting because I thought the same thing about Hokuge. I just thought the airtime was superior coming up over the hills as opposed to being pulled through them sitting on the back. So if you could only ride this coaster once, which it does not have the fastest dispatches, so let's say you only get one ride, try to go towards the front. Again, you won't be able to pick your row, but front row is, in my opinion, the best seat on this. In terms of a favorite part of Steel Dragon, I would say the small bunny hills towards the end. I thought those gave the best airtime on the ride. Those massive turns at the far end of the coaster are cool. I enjoyed those. They're a lot better than just a basic turnaround, and it's so impressive to look at. But in general, I would just say that this coaster was not quite as intense as I was hoping. You definitely do feel the speed during certain moments on this coaster, but I wouldn't say that speed is the main focus of this. Really, what this coaster just does really well is being a long ride. It just keeps on going. So I can absolutely appreciate it for what this ride does, but for me, it was nothing that blew me away. I mean, there's really a reason why I only rode this coaster twice. I think if it had a shorter line, then I probably would have done it maybe one more time. But at the end of the day, I mean, I was satisfied with 2 rides on this coaster. I spent a lot more time over at Hokuge, which in my opinion is by far the best coaster in the park. So when you have a ride like that, Steel Dragon does kind of get sidetracked, even though this ride is so much bigger. But it's like what I said earlier, if you've done a traditional out and back hyper coaster, particularly one of the ones by Morgan, you can pretty much guess what this ride is going to feel like. So for Steel Dragon's final score, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I think it's fun, but unfortunately, when you compare it to all of the other Gigas, this one places last. At least for me. It's just like what I was talking about. To me, it feels more like a hyper coaster. The only thing it really has going for it is that it's over 300 feet and goes 95 miles per hour. As I said, I'm not impressed with the restraints. The B&M trains on the Morgan track is just weird. And also the fact that this coaster is not as smooth as I was hoping. I can just say that I was a little underwhelmed with this ride. When I look back at my favorite coasters that I rode in Japan, I can think of several that I preferred over Steel Dragon. But it was definitely one of those bucket list coasters. You know, you gotta ride the longest coaster in the world at some point. So I'm glad that I could finally check that box off and also say that I rode every single traditional Giga coaster in the world this past year. Fury, Leviathan, Millennium Force, I-305, and Steel Dragon 2000. In 1 year? That's pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know down in the comments below if you've ridden Steel Dragon, if you agreed with my thoughts. If you disagree, that's totally fine. Just let me know why down below. And of course, hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for a lot more reviews coming soon to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.